Welcome, welcome. This is Life Development Now. It's during this time where we will highlight some of the wonderful work that's happening at our 501c3, the Life Development Corporation. There's been some wonderful things that have happened even over the pandemic. Today, I'm going to show you something that we did in 2020 that I thought was phenomenal. Dr. Angelique Johnson and the entire team put together what we call the Wealth Builder Movement. It is our endeavor at Life Development Corporation to give the community, give people tools to building wealth in your home. We understand that if we're going to see things turn around in our community, then we've got to have wealth building principles that we are pushing and that we're teaching people. So I want you to take a few moments and watch just a small clip. I think that over the course of 2 days, this was about 6 hours. I'm going to show you just a small clip of what happened in Wealth Builder 2020 right here at Kingdom Fellowship and Life Development Corporation. Watch this.
Wealth Builder. You're looking to launch a new business, invest in your community, make systemic change, and actionable plans. You are a wealth builder, but you can't do it alone. Join Wealth Builder Movement, an online collective advancing Black and brown wealth together. By joining our Facebook group and YouTube channel, you will learn from, invest with, and leverage others. Wealth is a group activity. Work, create, and build with others. Join the movement. The Wealth Builder Movement. The Wealth Builder Movement isn't about money, it's about peace of mind, hope for the future, and fulfilling your God-given purpose. You are a wealth builder. You're looking to launch a new business, invest in your community, make systemic change, and actionable plans. You are a wealth builder, but you can't do it alone. Join Wealth Builder Movement, an online collective advancing Black and brown wealth together. By joining our Facebook group.
Hi all, welcome to Wealth Builders Movement. We are so excited to have you guys joining us. We are doing this live and virtual for the first time ever. The Wealth Builders Movement focusing on Black and brown wealth development. Well, before we launched into, going through all the talks and talking about entrepreneurship and real estate investment and stock market investment and just hearing about the state of Black and brown wealth, we wanted to let you, our guests, know why did we even start this movement? Why now in the midst of COVID-19, in the midst of all the social injustice that's been happening but is now bubbling to the surface? Why is this relevant? Why are we talking about wealth and are we just talking about people getting rich? So we wanted to dialogue. Me and Timothy E. Finley Jr., we co-founded this movement. And so we just want to tell you a little bit about how we got going. So Timothy, do you want to introduce yourself? He's a pastor at Kingdom Fellowship Christian Life Center, but kind of speak a little bit about, your thoughts in terms of this movement.
Absolutely. Well, this conference, this online platform, I think is so relevant now. Life Development Corporation was founded maybe 11 years ago, and a part of our mission has always been to bring impact, both economically and in the various touch points that really we see hindrance in the African American community. When you talk about COVID-19 and you see the disparities when it comes to health care, it all comes back to economics. When we see the unrest in our country, you look at the protesting, it's around police brutality, but it still comes back to economics. I couldn't think of a better time to put a conference together to address these very, very real issues. Economics in our country, we have been shut out from them. And we've got to get to that point where we understand that if we're going to see our neighborhoods, if we're going to see true progress, we've got to have a formula in place to build wealth in our communities.
And then one thing that's really interesting when we're thinking about this is so often we hear about the systemic challenges to building wealth for Black and brown communities, and we know they're there. Obviously, we hear about things like reparations, we hear about political change, and we'll be talking about during this summit, we'll be talking about those issues. But what we really want to focus on are the Black and brown families, individuals, businesses, entities, that are already building wealth or wanting to build wealth, and how can we equip them with the knowledge that they're needing? How can we show inspirational examples of people that are already doing it? And then how can we build a community? Because wealth isn't built in a silo. It's really built by connecting people.
I remember reading in 2018, there was an article in the Forbes magazine before anyone knew anything about the pandemic. It called the racial wealth gap in America the real epidemic.
Yeah.
Before we even thought about coronavirus. This has been going on for 401 years. And specifically, we wanted to talk to Black and brown people because we're lagging behind. We did not get ourselves in this particular place. We didn't get ourselves in this particular bind. But I believe we have the collective knowledge, we have the collective reasoning to have the building blocks to really, really see an economic change in our community and continue to push for reparations.
And it's interesting you talk about COVID-19. Well, we knew that there were huge disparities in health outcomes for Black and brown communities. But now you see what I'm calling the economic pandemic, right? That you're referencing, Forbes was kind of talking about, but even with COVID-19, where they said almost nearly 50% of Black businesses close the doors out of, and so we think about the 50%.
Yeah.
So I have a medical device company. We do implants. We're small, right? We're a small business, small company, hoping to scale and grow. But even during this crisis, we've had some issues. And even though we're in medical devices, but for those that were in what they're calling non-essential businesses, so we have a high concentration of individuals in our communities that are in non-essential businesses, but coincidentally, non-essential workers.
Right.
So being impacted in a negative way by COVID-19 in terms of the health disparities, but then also on the business side, on the wealth side, getting it as well.
Well, we came into the pandemic in a bad place, and we're going to come out of the pandemic in a bad place. When you talk about the 40 to 50% of businesses that will not survive this time of economic shutdown, when you talk about the health disparities that are affecting African Americans, you have to really drill into that and find out why that is. Yeah. Well, we don't have proper food institutions in our neighborhoods. We don't have access to the kinds of medical pharmacies that really address our issues. And all of that, as much as people may not understand this, it all has to do with economics. And we have got to really push forward in a strategy for bringing that level of wealth building, a movement, as this is called, a movement to our community, so we will see the building blocks, not just for this time, but really it's about the next generation and the generation after that. As Black and brown people become the majority in this country, and that is happening, if our economic situation does not turn, it's going to slow down the entire economic foundation of this country.
And the one thing you mentioned about kind of these issues, it didn't just start.
No.
And when you have this big issue of redlining,
yes,
and a large part of wealth, in fact, the key factor in wealth for a lot of families is home ownership, is real estate investment. Well, if you have systemically segregated out Black and brown communities, and for those that don't know what redlining is, essentially it's basically having lower house values, strategically putting lower house values, originally historically on brown neighborhoods. And so now, because those values have been maintained, this depressed low value, there's no wealth in those communities. And the main way that wealth is generated. I know in Louisville, Kentucky, although we're speaking to people all over the nation, we have done a big studies on redlining. Do you want to speak a little bit about how redlining kind of impacts wealth?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you brought up the housing administration. The Federal Housing Administration historically has been one of the most racist, most corrupt systems in our country for the majority of the country. Even when you look at the statistics now that are just eye-popping, when you look at the median white family household average, it's $171,000 compared to $17,000 for Black families. In that Federal Housing Administration, there were actual verbiage in policy to keep Black families from being able to purchase homes. And now we see that consequence. It was just like a domino falling that has absolutely affected, crippled the Black Americans in this country. And this even goes further than that. When you go back to 250 years of slavery, when you talk about separate but equal, when you talk about, again, redlining, where there were places, when you talk about the ghetto, or you talk about Black neighborhoods, those did not come together organically.
Yeah.
Historically, we were put in places because we couldn't go
Structure
anywhere
of
else.
highways.
Absolutely. There were highway systems that were structured that would keep city buses out of downtown metropolitan areas. So now, when you look at where we are today, anyone that makes it seem as though they're surprised, or even the government that makes it seem as though they have no clue what's going on, these were all tools that were put in place to keep that disparity what it is. So again, I don't think the Wealth Builders Conference could have come at a better time on the heels of, well, I shouldn't say on the heels because it's still out there, but when you have coronavirus, when you have the unrest that's going on, this movement is absolutely needed.
Yeah, and I think one thing that to mention is, although we're talking about all of the challenges and all the systemic problems and everything that's going on, at the same time, you know, you have this opportunity with especially millennial, young, black, and brown individuals that are saying, hey, you may have redlined this community, but now we see something like gentrification popping in. But we don't just want gentrification to be an exploitation of the community. We'll have speakers like Christopher Senegal, who was invested in the 5th Ward in Houston and found a way to actually participate in the revitalization process by developing an entire block, having that block be residence for people coming out of the prison pipeline, particularly black men coming out of the prison system, and then when the property values raise, being able to flip that and encouraging other black and brown families to then take those mortgages. So we can participate in the process of individually getting ourselves advanced in a situation that, yes, we didn't set up, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things that people aren't already doing. There aren't things that you want to do. And I know a lot of times we focus so much on the doom and the gloom. I think that also is kind of another form of oppression, because so many times people want you to think about what's not working well, what's not going right. And instead of that, you know, then we want to equip you to what can you do about it.
Yeah, and the key to this is really fixing what has been done. I think about the quote from James Baldwin, you cannot fix what you will not face. We have to know what got us into this, but we also have to realize, as you've alluded to, that there is an opportunity to fix this. There is an opportunity before us to educate one another. And that's the key. The key is taking the knowledge, that's why you're on this stream tonight, taking that knowledge and saying, okay, how can I buy the block? How can I start a business on the right principles? How can I move forward and see wealth happen, not just for my home now, but really for generations to come?
Yeah, and wealth really is built over 3 generations.
Yes.
And that's something that I think, you know, we in America, we're very much so about, you know, quick money and fast and everything, but the reality is it takes 3 generations to build wealth. And the framework that's being set by people like Christopher Senegal and Louis Legier, who's also going to be on the show talking about sort of redevelopment of communities, individuals that have their own companies such as HJI Supply Chain Solutions and Nimbus Inc., some of our sponsors that we've had in this. There's many individuals that are working on changing this, but the key thing is, as we think about mindset, and a lot of tonight you guys are going to hear about mindset, and we wanted to make sure that this movement wasn't just about, you know, we're not glorified financial advisors. I'm not a financial advisor. Pastor Finley?
No.
Not a financial advisor.
Unless it's tithing.
Unless it's tithing. We will have financial advisors, but there's no prescription for wealth. Wealth is really not about the money. It's about providing peace for yourself and your families. It's about the freedom to operate in your purpose. It's about building a future for your kids. And that really happens through a slow process. So a lot of the advice that you'll be getting and the tips you'll be hearing both tonight and tomorrow night, there are long games. So please keep that in mind. This is a long game. Don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like, well, how, you know, I don't have enough money to go buy a block. You can start with the smallest little bit of contributions into your savings account. We're going to have people come on and tell you how you can pool your funds. Maybe you're not an accredited investor. I'm not an accredited investor. You have to be pretty wealthy to be an accredited investor. But you can actually pool your funds.
Well, listen, I hope that you enjoyed just a very small clip of our Wealth Builder movement that happened in 2020. I hope that you come back next week and make sure that you are, okay, is the mic on? Mine says on. It's a green light on. So, see, Live TV, this is what you get. We're learning, we're getting the kinks out. So again, hopefully they can hear me. Can they hear me, audio team? We're good. This is one of the greatest audio media teams in the history of mankind because they make things happen. So again, thank you all so much for being a part of Life Development Now. Next week, we're going to be back here talking things, all things life development. We want you to be a part of what we're doing here in Louisville, Kentucky. Thank you so much. And listen, we have a very special treat coming up. We have our congregational care team. They're coming together under the direction of Minister Nikki Harden. Stay tuned. Here in about 15 minutes, you're going to be blessed. God bless you.